It's the Happy Families Podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Family life can be a little tricky now and then. There's a lot to coordinate. Things sometimes, the bottom drops out and things go pear-shaped. Came across a fabulous quote a little while ago from James Clear, the author of, I think he sold 15 million copies of Atomic Habits now, Kylie. Like one of the best-selling books in recent years, if not the best. Phenomenal.
I saw a girl reading Atomic Habits in the cafe the other day.
Did you give her a high five and sort of get right into a conversation with her about it?
I actually wanted to, but I chickened out. But I was pretty excited.
Yeah, it's a great book. Anyway, James Clear said this, and this is not in the book. This was something else that I found that he'd written. He said, most big, deeply satisfying accomplishments in life take at least 5 years to achieve. This can include building a business, cultivating a loving relationship, writing a book, getting in the best shape of your life, raising a family, and more. 5 years is a long time. It's much slower than most of us would like. If you accept the reality of slow progress, you have every reason to take action today. If you resist the reality of slow progress, 5 years from now, you'll simply be 5 years older and still looking for a shortcut. How good is that?
So good.
Does it make you want to go and exercise?
It's tempting.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Let's finish the podcast. No, I'm just kidding. Kylie, today's conversation is about building a better family, building a flourishing family. We've broached this on the podcast before.
I know how to settle this.
Yeah, whack him.
What? No. Family meeting.
Oh.
The topic of family meetings. I'm raising it because they're hard to do. They're hard to get right, but when you do and do them consistently, that 5-year project to making your family happier, well, you can kind of speed it up. It is a semi-shortcut. And there was an article on The Conversation recently, The Conversation being that academic website that's out there, that just sort of prompted me to think, we need to revisit this because it was a great article to bring the topic up, but it didn't do much to give people concrete, practical strategies. So let's talk family meetings. You used to do them in your home when you were growing up.
When we got married, you said, let's have a family meeting.
It was just you and I. Let's have like a couples meeting.
And it didn't go very well. And you couldn't work out what was going on.
You wouldn't talk.
Every time we sat down, everything that came out of your mouth felt like an attack to me. And I'd just clam up.
Which it wasn't. I was saying, let's improve our lives, our relationships. Let's be awesome, because I think we can be.
But it wasn't until months later that we started to really kind of look into why it was that way for me. And I started sharing with you what family meetings were like in my home growing up.
I have 2 words for you to explain it. Baggage.
That's one word.
Yeah, well, but it felt like it was pretty heavy. So 2 words today.
When I was growing up, we would get together for a weekly family meeting and we would all air our grievances. And what started off as something that was supposed to be positive, it turned into an absolute mosh pit of grievance and hurt feelings and accusations, and it was just disastrous. So when you and I started sitting down as a couple, all I could think about was everything that was coming out of your mouth was accusing me that I wasn't good enough. And it was a really, really tricky space for us to sit with for a long time until we realised that we just would change the name and that would disassociate family meetings with what we were doing.
Yeah, so in your family you called it a family council, which does sound a bit serious, doesn't it? So we came up with a much catchier title. What did we call it again?
Weekly Couples Inventory.
I see, catchy.
WCI for short.
We'd have a weekly WCI.
I actually think it worked better because it actually took out all the emotion. It was a very clinical.
And since then, we've done them. Now, Rachel Sharman is a University of Sunshine Coast psychology researcher, and she wrote this article on The Conversation, which we will link to in the show notes. But she highlights that there could be some risks to family meetings. There could be, and we've kind of outlined them. She also highlights that there's barely any research. There's no real evidence out there that we can lean on to know if they do or they do not work. The only evidence we've got is the evidence from people like you who grew up in homes where they didn't work particularly well, or people like me who grew up in a home where, well, actually we didn't really have them, but you and I put them into practice and we figured out how to make them work.
I think one of the biggest risks, if we're we're talking frankly, is that if parents who are leading meetings do not have the emotional intelligence to keep their own emotions in check,
A little bit of restraint.
and are able to model appropriate behavior as they work through big emotions that will sometimes be expressed in those meetings, then it's going to be a mashup.
Well, I think the other thing to bear in mind here is this family meeting is not meant to be a let's all vent experience. This is meant to be a productive conversation about what we're doing in our family and what we're looking to do moving forward. Is about creating a vision and moving in that direction. So the benefits that Rachel Sharman highlights, basically she says that if we can get everyone experiencing the opportunity to be heard, that is, they get to use their own voice, if we can catch up with everyone, what everyone's doing and feeling, if we can talk about upcoming events or challenges, and if we can genuinely canvass different opinions on how to move forward in a positive way, then we usually get good outcomes. Everyone asks for their opinion, get to speak their mind without interruption or criticism, and making sure that it's developmentally appropriate. Oh, and making sure that the kids know our family is not a democracy. Like, the parents are the prefrontal cortex of the family, and just because you want ice cream for dinner and breakfast and lunch every single day doesn't mean we're going to have a vote on it. I mean, we're going to be talking about reasonable things that need to be discussed. Kylie, you and I have been talking about this for a while, and we put a list together of the benefits that we've seen in our home with our 6 daughters as we've regularly and consistently held family meetings. Let me run through those 4 things. Number 1, kids learn to articulate. For me, one of the most important skills that a young person, a child, can learn is to articulate an argument, to stand in front of a group of people or sit in front of a group of people and make their case. I think schools should have more public speaking, not less. I know people with anxiety don't like that, but the best way to overcome it is exposure to it and practice with it. The ability to stand in front of a group of people and say, here's the case I want to make and these are the reasons for it, may be one of the most important skills we can develop in our life. And family meetings are a really soft, safe place, usually, if we do it right, for children to learn that skill.
And add on to that is it's important for them to know that their voice matters. And if they can't feel that in their home, when will they ever experience it anywhere else? This is the training ground.
And I guess that's the point that you make with your story. You didn't really get to have a voice in your family meetings. So when I said, let's do it, you kind of thought, great, now I'm going to be threatened in my marriage as well, which was never the point. And obviously that hasn't really happened, but there's that feeling there. So we've got to be able to do this right. For kids to be able to articulate their position is so valuable. Second one, children learn to regulate their emotions in these family meetings because sometimes they hear things that don't sit well with them. Not everything we say in these meetings lands just right.
And I guess the idea and notion, we can be comfortable with being uncomfortable. One of the things that we struggle with as a human race, I want to say, is being uncomfortable. We don't like that feeling. We run away from it. So whether it's a big emotion or a difficult person, our natural instinct is to run.
Yeah, it's kind of like that quote from Brené Brown that we used the other day when we were talking about emotion regulation on the podcast just over a week ago. We are first and foremost emotional beings. We're rational beings second, which means that every now and again, our rationality is tied up and bound and gagged in the boot while emotions are driving that car down the road.
And so this is a beautiful, hopefully a safe space for you to work through some big emotions or challenging emotions. They don't have to be big necessarily, just challenging. These emotions don't feel comfortable. We don't sit well with them.
And so that ties in with the third benefit, which is frustration tolerance. Kids learn, again, in a fairly low stakes environment to tolerate things that are a bit uncomfortable, tolerate that frustration. The fourth and final one, social skills. This is an opportunity where children learn to listen. They learn to take turns, wait, understand other people's perspectives. The social skills that come out of family meetings, I think, are just invaluable. So important.
And hopefully there's some good communication being modelled by mum and dad
Yeah,
that helps them work through that process.
Yeah, otherwise this doesn't work. Now, here's the interesting thing I mentioned, and Rachel Sharman in her conversation article says there's pretty much no research out there on this stuff. There is a little bit of research on family meetings, but it usually looks at adult siblings, typically in like
looking back.
No, in a palliative care situation. That is, we're going to get the family together because there's going to be a death or there's going to be a divorce or there's going to be some major challenge that we're facing. And so
So high stakes, high emotions.
Right. The research is mixed in terms of the outcomes. Why? Well, because a lot of people don't know how to regulate their emotions, deal with frustration tolerance, have the social skills to listen, take turns, work through it all, and fundamentally articulate their positions in healthy ways. All the benefits that we've been describing, if they haven't had practice with it, makes family meetings really tough.
At the beginning of the podcast, you shared that quote from James Clear and the idea of this 5-year process. But you also acknowledged that in doing family meetings, it probably doesn't need to take 5 years for you to see benefits.
No.
But I would say that the idea of building strong, lasting family relationships is a long-term process.
Yeah.
While your family meetings will help you get more organised and be on the same page with each other, it's actually the consistency and the constant check-in and accountability that we each hold with one another as we work through those big emotions, hard things, and the changes we want to make for better family life, that relationships flourish. But that is a long-term thing. And if you look at getting to that place of being, older siblings sitting down because there's a big thing that we've got to deal with, we've worked through this as children, and hopefully over time we've built beautiful, strong relationships so we can
building
deal
trust, right?
with these things as they come.
So in the conversation article from Rachel Sharman from the University of Sunshine Coast, she doesn't give us a lot of tips on what to do. She highlights not a lot of research. There are some risks, but it can work, we think. We've got a lot of experience in this area, and we're going to give you 6 tips that can help to make a difference. First things first, talking about what went well. Celebrating success is kind of the way we frame it, but we're not talking about high fives and artificially inflating how well we're doing. It's just a 2-minute conversation. Hey, what's working out in our family this week?
That's the key point. While we could talk about and celebrate things that are actually happening in each of our individual lives, this family meeting is about what's working well in our family.
Yeah, great.
And the great thing about this is the acknowledgement that everyone has a voice. Even your 2-year-old can tell you what's good about our family.
Yeah. It's almost a gratitude circle, but we're being a bit more specific. We've really hit mornings well this week, or really loved the way we've been having good quality conversations around the dinner table at night, or loved our Super Saturday on Saturday morning.
Or loved that everyone came together and did 10-minute tidy every night after dinner.
Second thing, what didn't work so well? Critical thing here, so that we don't slide into the accusatory stance, is we're talking about, on average as a family, here are the things that we struggled with together. It's not
about individuals.
Not a finger-pointing exercise. What went well? What didn't go well? Third thing, when we look at the stuff that didn't go well, or maybe when we look at the things that did go well, if we were to do one thing more or better this week to make our family function better, what would it be?
And again, having each individual voice in the mix creates a better whole in the end. The outcomes are better because there's greater accountability.
And more buy-in.
We're all on the same page.
It's really, really important, though, that you consider not just what went wrong, but what went well, because sometimes things are going okay, but you're doing one thing really well. Just do more of that. That feels awesome. You're building on your successes rather than constantly trying to manage and patch up your weaknesses. So it could go either way there. Our last 3 ideas, let me run through them all together because they all kind of fit together really neatly. Include food. Kids really like that. and so do we as grown-ups, I've noticed. Number 5, have it at a regular time. Be consistent with it. That's where the kids get into that rhythm and routine. They expect that it will happen, and you can, the more consistent you are, the better you are at it. And last but not least, once you've gone through all of that stuff, have a quick look at the calendar, talk about what to expect this week, and you're done. You can do it in, it depends on the size of your family, 10, maybe 15 minutes.
So while there's not a lot of research to let us know whether or not these meetings actually have any significant impact in your family, our experience has been that it has totally changed the way our family feels and the way our family functions. So our big tips are what went well, what didn't go well, and what do we want to focus on to make things better. Include food, keep it nice and short, and involve everybody.
Okay. Our next one's on Sunday. I'm actually kind of looking forward to it now that we've had this conversation. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Thanks for your great work, Justin. If you'd like more information about making your family happier, visit us at happyfamilies.com.au. Sign up for our membership. We'll give you even more information about how to roll out those family meetings and make them work. You get a free course as part of the membership. It's worth, I don't know, like $400 or $500. All about pulling it together, and our first unit in that course is all about the stuff we've just talked about. So much value in it. happyfamilies.com.au. Click on the memberships page and get your info there.